Watermelon.
Yes, that's right. What's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WPwatercooler's WPblab. It is episode number 105. No
Woo-hoo!
joke. 105. Awesome. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about branding implications and acquisitions. We don't have anyone else joining us today. It's just Bridget and I, which is kind of awesome because we've had a decent number of folks just come on the show and hang out. We've even not had Bridget at all and just had Russ on the show hanging out as well. So, awesome. Before we get started, Bridget, introduce yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Thanks, Jason. I'm Bridget Willard. I'm a marketing consultant. I specialize in business-to-business relationships on Twitter in the WordPress and nonprofit space. I have previous experience in construction, and I opinionate on Twitter at You Too Can Be Guru. My website is bridgetwillard.com.
Opinionate. Let me look that one up. Okay,
opine. I have opine. Sorry.
You opined.
I would have edited that, but whatever.
Backspace.
Right?
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over on Twitter as @Jason Tucker, and my website is jasontucker.blog. And I do this show as well as another show called WPwatercooler, which is the name of the network here. And that happens tomorrow. And we're also going to be talking about acquisitions. It's so weird. We're totally going to figure out what we're going to talk about regarding acquisitions. So let's talk a little bit about this. So we've had a couple different acquisitions in WordPress for the last couple, I'd say within this year, right? I mean, we've had the one from iThemes with
Liquid Web.
Liquid Web, yeah. And then we had Securi join up with GoDaddy.
Also, and then Managed WP.
Managed WP.
Manny from Managed WP.
That's awesome. Did somebody hand make that? Yeah,
these are hand crocheted.
That's cool. So Manny, yep. So that we ended up having that happen, and then our most recent one, which is what was that, Bridget?
It was WP Engine taking acquiring Studio Press.
Yeah. So by having those ones kind of all happen within this 1 year, it's interesting because we haven't seen a whole lot of this kind of shift happen in the WordPress space, in at least the years that I've been, doing this sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting to see how these businesses are growing up. I love that the ice cream truck's just driving by as I'm sitting here talking.
Free background music.
Right. We're gonna get sued because they're playing Christmas songs in the middle of the year. Awesome. But so really what it comes down to is that a lot of these businesses are maturing to a point now that they can be acquired. They have enough assets, they have enough business, they have enough, all that stuff. People have been putting in that sweat equity to kind of make their companies really, really big and attractive to folks. And so it makes sense to kind of bring these all together like that. And so we thought we would take a moment. I mean, we're never lawyers on this show. We're never MBAs or any of that sort of thing on this show here, unless Bridget has one that I don't know about.
No,
but I wanted to kind of discuss this a little bit because especially when it comes to branding, and that's kind of where Bridget comes in on the marketing side of this, is how do we kind of make, how are these things kind of working together? And then what happens when you're a customer of one or a customer of the other, either the acquired or the acquiring party? And then what happens with that? And so I think it's interesting.
In the real world, this happens all the time. And nobody really talks about it that much, except when it's a culture problem or when it presents a cognitive dissonance between whatever your brand is and the brand that's being acquired, or vice versa. So when I was working with Jason Cannell, he's a partner with, he's one of the founding partners for Creature Comforts Brewing in Georgia. And so we had talked about the Wicked Weed brand being acquired by Anheuser-Busch. So this is something that's very similar to the WordPress space. So I think that would be good to sort of talk about that briefly, just because it's very similar to the way that WordPress feels about acquisitions. So But so Wicked Weed had this big festival and everything like that, and their whole thing was that they're not the big brewer and they're not the big, it's one thing if you don't care about the man, but when you're the one that's rallying against the man and then you get acquired by the man, it's a problem. And so they've had issues because people don't, they felt betrayed. Their customer base who believed in their vision felt betrayed. And this is when it's a big, giant branding problem, right? Now, Automatic has been buying companies for a long, long time, and nobody really cares that much. They just like Automatic to be the enemy. You can read this on Twitter. So, oh yeah, Automatic just got Jetpack, or Automatic just got a Kismet, or Automatic just got whatever. Nobody even cares anymore because they already hate Automatic, right? So, and I'm sorry if you don't like hearing this, if you're somebody's with Automatic, but that's the biggest problem with Automatic, is that the WordPress ecosystem sees Automatic was with all this money, not doing the things that the WordPress system with free and open source believes in, which Automatic is a hosting company. So they're first of many to be acquiring things, right?
Yeah, I mean, that goes all the way back to Gravatar, BuddyPress,
exactly.
Intense Debate, PollDaddy, BLO.gs, After the Deadline, Plinky, Poster, Lean Domain Search, CloudUp, Long Reads, ScrollKit, Parka, Code for the People, Woo, and Atvist. There's a couple different ones. I'm looking through a list on Crunchbase where they kind of give you a list of. I'll have those in the show notes so you can take a look at it.
Yeah, so like that's been the thing, right? So when it came out that WP Engine, and I had friends that managed WP. There's my Manny that I promised to. This is my actual second Manny. I have two Mannies that I'm parenting. If you've been to their booth at Europe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But and one partner's happy with it and one partner works for himself now, right? And some people were happy that GoDaddy's improving their service, and some people are unhappy that Managed WP is owned by GoDaddy. So then we had an issue with our friend Sakuri at being bought out by a GoDaddy, and some people were happy with it and some people were not, and some employees were happy and some people were not, right? So that's their choice. But Sakuri was never one of those people from my standpoint that was like rallying against this. We make companies so that we have assets, so we have something to sell, right? So I'm never surprised at stuff like that because I'm probably the most capitalistic person in the WordPress space. But I went on Twitter and I was like, wow, that really surprises me that WP Engine bought Studio Press. And it surprised me because if you remember, WP Engine just got some venture capital because they were hurting. Okay. Now, we saw that Liquid Web bought iThemes, but I just saw that as, well, Liquid Web is a struggling web host and they needed the customer base. Makes sense. And in the theme space, we're not even using the G word. But the truth is that right now, as somebody wrote it, that is basically a fire sale. Right now, theme industries, if they're not scared, they're foolish. Because the page builders are scared. So definitely themes should be scared, because people kept saying, oh, this makes total sense because people want a turnkey solution. Well, that's what Gutenberg is aiming to do. So host doesn't need a theme business. The theme business needs the capital that hosts have in order to fix, maintain, and repair and create new themes that are Gutenberg compatible, okay? Because that is going to be a tremendous hit on support and development resources. The hosting companies are buying the customer names and the customer base because that's all you have to sell. That's all that's really, people will say, oh, Bridget, you're so wrong, because definitely, these themes are worth all this money. It's not worth any money. It's a theme that's going to be dead when Gutenberg comes out in November. or dying. And so like, this is a smart move. So WP Engine was surprising to me because they just had financial trouble and now they're buying StudioPress.
Well, Apple did the same thing. I mean, Apple needed Microsoft's help, went and bought Microsoft. You know, Microsoft threw some money at Apple, and they didn't buy them or anything, but they threw money at Apple and said, "Okay, no problem." And then Apple turns around and starts buying a whole bunch of companies. So yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's the same sort of thing. The kind of the interesting slant that I had regarding this is what happens when you're in one team or the other. So if you're in with WP Engine, what are the kind of value add benefits that happen by being a customer of theirs already? You know, is it that you now get a discount on the package of being able to have Genesis and all of its themes and stuff available to you? Is it cheaper? Is it something they just roll it in?
To me, I think that's a smart thing. It's like the Genesis people tend to be agencies.
Yeah. And so, WP Engine is definitely an agency driven thing. People aren't just like walking off the street joining WP Engine.
No, but it completely aligns. You know, it's not a bad branding thing, but I just think it's funny that nobody's really as like, oh, they just got sold by the man like they are with Automatic. They're like, oh, the hosting companies all have money. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And we want people to be able to buy and sell companies. Otherwise, what are we doing? You know, but it's just funny because people like WP Engine, so therefore they're not that upset with them. And remember, WP Engine just raised their prices a couple of months ago. People were pissed as hell about that. But they bought studio themes and it was like, good job, Brian Gardner. We're so proud of you. Because they were on the side of the underdog, which was StudioPress.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. And I feel like if you're doing something that makes sense, right? I feel like when GoDaddy, okay, I had to say I love everybody at GoDaddy that I met. You know, actual people. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. But they have a super bad reputation, right? And they've been trying to recover for a long time. So when they bought Sucuri, I thought, oh, okay, they are saying to us, we are working on our problems. We are trying to be more secure. We are, you know, making a better dashboard with Managed WP and everything like that. But people were so upset. And in our meetups, we were defending them. And they were like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe Sucuri sold out. Doesn't mean they sold out. They're still, you know, their own entity within the GoDaddy family. But still, it's like there was that feeling of betrayal. Like I've sensed that a lot more with the Sucuri acquisition than with the StudioPress acquisition. And I think because StudioPress Genesis users tend to be agency people. And I would venture to say that probably at least 50% of their customer base uses Genesis, and that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I tons of companies or rather agencies are building sites using Genesis because they can build those they can build those pretty quick because they're able to already kind of build out a tool set that they need in order to be able to make it happen. So they've already figured out what hooks, what filters, what things they need to kind of tie into, and it's a very hook and filter sort of managed theme, theme setup. So it's easier for you to be able to kind of just like build these things out and get them working appropriately. And they're all child themes off of one theme, which is Genesis itself. So being able to swap out child themes, it's pretty darn easy for somebody doing, this. If they want to do a quick facelift, they can just go download another one of the themes, child themes, install it, and then they're good to go. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know that developers really like it, but like the implications to me, and I've been the one talking about this, one of the few actually talking about Gutenberg. But do you need a child theme with Gutenberg? If you stay on Genesis, you have to be on 4.9 point blah 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 forever. So what is the value? And that's why I thought about it when I was going through this big giant debate on Twitter, is really what they bought was the customer base.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was even thinking about this and with some of the folks from WP Watercooler was that I'd imagine that some of this also kind of ties into the fact that you have a theme or a plugin that's already being installed in that. So for instance, with I haven't seen it with Security, which is actually nice that they haven't done this, but um, being able to not advertise, but be able to show the fact that they're part of that family of technologies that are available. And so it seems like a lot of these hosting companies are essentially trying to build a better experience or better stack that is already kind of built out. And it says, hey, if you use this has already been kind of figured out for you. So like, for instance, with Liquid Web, it's like, okay, well, with Liquid Web, you can use all the iTheme stuff. So if you want backup, well, then there's Backup Buddy. And if you need security stuff, there's security stuff. And you need this, and there's this. So it's already kind of figured out. And that all these things talk to each other and work well with each other because they're all made by the same company.
Right.
And so if you have that, and then you add on, if they go and buy a theme, somebody who already has a theme marketplace or something, then geez, now they have the whole 9 yards. They have the backup, they have the themes, they have the security, they have all of those things all kind of put together.
Exactly. And I mean, people are saying it's a turnkey situation. And I agree with that from the standpoint that you just mentioned. But that I'm saying that they're going to have to compete. They're going to have to compete with Gutenberg being that solution or trying to be that solution. But at the same time, part of what makes WordPress the wild, wild west is that, we're all building our own Legos and then trying to make them fit. And that's the free and open source software. So making something turnkey is the opposite. So it does make sense, for a hosting company to do that. Although my thing that I wonder about is how many people are just going to a host to build a website. Are they going to WPengine.com and saying, I'm going to start my website? Or is that Bluehost? Right? Because I know that Bluehost has also significantly changed their onboarding experience, or is it WordPress.com, which they are directly competing with Wix and Squarespace, and finally putting some advertising dollars toward it, on YouTube and things. So the being a resource and an easy, seamless workflow is a good sell to freelancers and agencies. Mm-hmm. So that's who I think their customers really are, not so much the end user. But it would be interesting to see how that rolls out in the white labeling hosting companies, and if they are going to be more whatever bespoke or customized or whatever like that.
Yeah, well, even that's how Genesis is very not white label, just no label. Like, it's just, I'm a theme that exists, that you install this and you're good to go. Now you can build off of both the Genesis theme as well as the child theme that is being used that you go and purchase from either through the marketplace or through that. So I'd be curious how some of the companies that are out there that are building child themes for Genesis, how they're even looking at this. And I started digging around on Facebook to see, like, what are people talking about regarding, the Studio Press acquisition stuff, and how is that even kind of and everybody was just posting the same link over and over again. Here's WP Tavern. We're talking about WP Tavern. And every once in a while, I'd see something from Crunchbase or something like that, where they're like, well, here's how this company is set up. And then I started seeing other acquisitions. So I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about, like, when Bluehost was acquired. Let me look into that a little bit. Oh, I totally forgot when, WP Curve was acquired. I started looking into that. So, I've used a couple of these, obviously these different companies out there, even like Media Temple, same thing. Well, Media Temple is, acquired by GoDaddy. So you have a whole bunch of these kinds of things that are all tied in. But what happens with that? It's exactly what they're saying in the chat room, is that, and what you were saying earlier, is that it's a customer based thing. And by having those customers, now you can say, hey, look, we also do these other things too, which is why GoDaddy got Manage WP, because it's like, if you want to manage a whole bunch of websites, and especially with GoDaddy is trying to really position itself as kind of like how WP Engine does it, being
So,
the pro side of it. I want to have more. I have more customers than just myself and my own cat blog. I actually have other things that are going on here as well because of that fact, and because because GoDaddy doesn't have like this like one fully inclusive dashboard for each site that you're running. They're all separated out. You can now manage those through Manage WP and be able to use that. So I can see where that acquisition works out really well, especially when it comes to Sakuri as well. It's like that right there is going to make it so everything's going to be tied together nicely when it comes to security.
So speaking of Sakuri, I've just thought I would do a quick search on Twitter of StudioPress and WP Engine, and Tony Perez's blog came up, and he, not surprisingly, agrees with me. He said this week I read a report highlighting WP Engine's initiative to win over agencies. It's grown well over the past 12 months. This is an important insight, he says. It speaks to what and where they are focusing their energy, where they see the opportunity. You could argue that agencies have always been at the core of their strategy, whether intentionally or not. Tony says, if I were to guess, WP Engine realized that Genesis Framework is the most prevalent in their environment and among the core market. If you strategically pursue a market and you realize they all use a tool, the next step is obvious, buy it or partner with them. And so his actual theory is that they're trying to be more like HubSpot, less like Automatic, more like HubSpot. And I guess if they do that, then yeah, maybe, because HubSpot's pretty spendy. It could be an interesting turn. I mean, somebody who has a lot of insight would be Tony Perez, who went through this as a person, who was acquired. But it does make sense. It's just that when you see people complaining about the pricing and the pricing goes up and then all of a sudden they get acquired, and to me, that's the branding problem. The branding problem isn't that they're smart to do this. The branding problem is the way they communicate. Okay. So the marketing angle of all this isn't whether or not it was a smart idea to acquire this or that or the other thing.
Yeah, there's another podcast for that. It's not ours.
Yeah, it's tomorrow at 11 o'clock
or some other podcast in general.
Or whatever. But I mean, we could talk. We're smart people. Like, I already nailed it. I don't need an MBA. They bought the customer base. TLDR. Right. Okay. So here's the thing. You have to communicate this in a way that that you have to communicate it well, right? So people are really they're for the underdog until they're not. So if you're like think about people in your family, okay? Mm-hmm. And like, you have a cousin and they're broke all the time, broke, asking everybody and their mom, all these, literally everybody and your mom for money and all this stuff and how hard their life is and blah, 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 it's so hard. And all of a sudden they've got, a new car and they're driving a BMW and they just got a leather jacket and they just went to, the Caribbean, and you're like, wait a second, what happened to it? It's so hard, and so you're like, this is kind of a brand. There's something not. You feel a little bit like cheated, duped, So to me, that was the problem with the WP Engine thing. The security thing was closer to the wicked weed, but people accepted it because GoDaddy does a great job of infiltrating and assimilating with the WordPress community. And more hosting companies should do the same. I know Media Temple tried to do it. They were always themselves. They were never. But I will tell you that I had an experience at, and I wasn't the only person who had this experience, but I had an experience at WordCamp Europe walking through the sponsor area where, okay, so how when you're walking the mall, Jason, there's all those kiosks. And somebody gets out there and goes, don't you want really soft hands? No, I'm going to the next store. Like, leave me alone, you weirdo. I was walking the sponsor area and a WP Engine person walked in front of me. How's your WordCamp experience so far? I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm on my way to the bathroom, right? I'm like, you can tell when somebody's intentionally walking. I'm like, it's totally fine. Well, are you enjoying WordCamp? Like, yeah, I'm enjoying WordCamp. Well, why did you come? And I'm like, because I am the team rep for the marketing team. We just had the biggest contributor day in the whole world. Like, you don't even know me, like,
Right.
why don't you ask me some questions that are more normal? Like, hey, Bridget, or what's your name? Oh, my name's Bridget. What do you do on WordPress? Like, that's one thing we did right at Give. Then you find out who they are before you start making assumptions. Like, is this your first WordCamp? No, dumbass. This is the biggest WordCamp on the planet. It's not anybody's first WordCamp. There's maybe 10 people who went to Serbia to go to a WordCamp that weren't already in Belgrade.
They're walking by.
Like, just let me just go to the bathroom, right? And that tells me, okay, they've hired people that don't know anything about the WordPress community, and they're putting them at the booth and they're selling aggressively.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work here. So then I'm like, man, what is going on at WP Engine? They're having really big problems, because that wasn't them. When they had Shada, and they were always part of meetups, and they were always part of the WordPress community, and they were your friends, and you didn't feel like icky car salesman around them. Instead, I avoided that route to go to the bathroom or to do anything ever since then, because it was terrible. And it wasn't. And somebody else said, hey, did you, they said that to me, did you go by the WP Engine booth? That was a terrible experience. Like, what was that? Because they don't get it. You hire, that's what people do in trade shows.
Right. Yeah. It's the
people do in WordPress.
Right.
So
it's what used to be like the quote unquote, and I know this is a term that isn't used all that much, but the quote unquote booth babe of where the person's like, I'm a model and I can say words, and I will say the words that are on this piece of paper right here. And that's it. And if you ask me anything off script, I'm not going to be able to answer. Not to say that that's what was happening with this, but the approach that was happening with this seems like it was that way. It was
a huge cognitive dissonance. And then a week later, they bought Studio Press. Okay. So for me, I'm like, I'm super surprised, and I'm so jet lagged. I couldn't even like explain to people why I was so surprised. And then when you're like, what should we talk about? Can we talk about this? Just to back up every tweet I've done about how surprised I was. I'm not surprised about acquisitions. I'm not surprised that companies buy companies. I am for it. I'm for people buying companies to destroy them. I am a capitalist. I don't have a problem with that. You can tweet at me at YouTube can be guru, no A, and we can talk about it. But what I am surprised about is that they don't understand their users. They don't understand the culture. And so it'll be interesting to see if their acquisition of Studio Press will help WP Engine or will destroy Genesis. Because it's going to be one or the other.
Yeah. Well, I guess no matter what, there would be one or the other, right? I mean, it's not like it's because of any type of bad situation, right? It's just that it's either going to work or not work.
Well, sometimes it's more subtle, but like in the WordPress community, oh man, it's really hard to get accepted. You have to assimilate. You have to do it so slow.
It's definitely a long game that needs to happen there to make that work.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin in the chat, hi, Kevin Hoffman, is saying that he's been reading a lot of analogies with iThemes, Liquid Web, Sakuri, etc. But he doesn't think a lot of people are talking about the local flywheel precedent. And actually, in our meetup on Monday, they were talking about that. That
what's the precedent there?
That local is the like the desktop server.
The local development suite.
So offering that as a host gets you into the host, which makes total sense. It makes sense for a host to have a local development tool, right? That's not a cognitive dissonance, right? And then you could stretch it out and go, okay, well, I guess it makes sense if they do this. I guess it makes sense if they do that. But it's the approach of the culture. To me, this is more of the branding issues than the actual business. Financial, I shouldn't say business. There's all business. The financial bottom line is a different question. And something we're not going to have access to because we don't. It's funny because there was this whole nother tweet storm I did about salaries, because there was a job posted. Some people said I should go for it as a chief marketing officer for a WordPress company, and it was paying $48,000 a year. For a C-suite position. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a problem. And people were like, what do you mean? I'm like, hello, look at the real world. If WordPress is going to scale and try to be with the big boys, then the companies also have to do that. And they are not, most companies aren't transparent with their salaries in WordPress. But like somebody said, well, what do you mean? I go, okay, well, let's talk about who is transparent. Buffer. And happiness engineers start at $65,000, $69,000. Those are the people who are on Twitter and sending you stickers. Okay. And
but those people are also in San Francisco, and $68,000 is like $40,000 here, right?
Buffer is fully remote, just like Automatic is.
Oh, okay.
They don't even have an office anymore.
Huh.
Buffer is a freemium service, just like most WordPress plugins. And I think that we can learn a lot from their business model. They don't spend money on overhead, and they do. They give you a lot of people that are fully remote give bonuses based upon where you live. But yeah, they're a really great company. I didn't fit in their culture, but I'm not really a big company person. But like, you could start looking at this like, oh, we don't have any money. We can't pay people. Oh, now we bought this. You know what I mean? I don't know what WP Engine is, but there's like all this talk now, because what's happening is the WordPress space is growing up. We're all growing up. Nobody's 20 anymore. We have kids, mortgages. New people are coming in with management experience, but we're at 30, 31, 32%. It's going to be a little bit of growing pains until we get 50. So I think what value could somebody get out of this show? I would say know the WordPress community deeply. Learn community deeply before you start acquiring stuff. And when you do, learn how to communicate it in a way that doesn't make people feel betrayed, because that is the worst thing that can happen. And I'm not saying it's happened with any of these companies, but I'm saying that is a huge risk in a close-knit culture like WordPress. Is very similar, in my opinion, to the craft beer movement. So I always say, look at what happened with Wicked Weed. Look at what happened with Wicked Weed. They sold out to AB, and nobody likes that.
Yeah. Well, I did want to go back to something though.
Yes.
While you were talking, I was thinking about this. So the local by Flywheel, when it was Pressmatic, that was smart because of the fact that by getting people to take their locally developed website, so somebody who's either somebody who, I hate to say it's like newbies that are learning WordPress, because it's usually the other way around. It's like somebody who is building a whole bunch of websites, and they want to be able to take those websites and instantly push them up to the hosting provider and be like, okay, well, it's been deployed, we're good to go. I think it's super smart to acquire something like that and then say like, look, we're going to make it so that you can use this thing on whatever web host you want. But by the way, this thing is really made, like it's really made well to be able to be used with our service called Flywheel. So if you want to do this, use our software. And if you want to use this software because it's free, go for it. But we're hoping at some point you're going to come around and be like, you know what? I'm going to try Flywheel out and check it out. And I've had people at my meetup where they were like, I've tried this one. I've tried MAMP. I tried WAMP, ZAMP, LAMP, whatever. I've tried all those. And I've tried all of the competitors to Flywheel as well. But I tried by local, and instead I tried local to check it out just to see. And I was like, I want to see what happens when I push this to their boxes. Boom, deployed. Look, it just worked. And I don't know, like that right there just kind of shows you that even developers are lazy. And if you can get I don't
know if it's laziness. It's I'm going to say efficient, and we hope that they would be more efficient with their time.
Yeah, definitely. But by seeing that, by being able to do that, I mean, that right there was that trigger point of like, ooh, this is cool. Which is why I think I totally agree with you in the sense that by doing the doing these other acquisitions where it's essentially an add-on to the service, but it's not something that has to be used onto that service, because you can use security with whatever other hosting provider you want to use. You don't have to use.
That was the smart thing that they did. That was so smart.
They will scan a Microsoft server to check to see if IIS is up to date and if anything's messed up with it or not. They'll do remediation with any for provider that's out there, any other thing that's messed up that needs to be fixed. They'll do all of those. So, and GoDaddy's been like that for a while with their stuff, because they even have like an accounting software that I can't remember which one it was. I was trying to look through Crunchbase here as to which one it was that they used, but they acquired them. They also acquired a company called Freedom Voice, which is like a phone system, like an online phone system.
Yeah, VoIP.
Yeah, VoIP setup. So they have that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of these different things that. It was Outright. That was the one. Outright was the one. That was way back when. That was like 2012. But like those types of things make it so that it's like it's a suite of products, but those products all run independent or can run independent of the mothership.
Well, that's
which I think is super smart.
Well, that's what Google did by differentiating themselves with being Alphabet.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
So now we're going to switch a little bit into a weird thing. Okay.
All right.
I was at Europe. I don't know how many Americans were watching the Matt Mullenweg keynote at Europe or the Q&A period, but there was this really bizarre first question where somebody asked why Google is buying WordPress.
Say what now?
Why exactly? And we were all going, what? And so Google was there. They were a big sponsor, and they're spending a lot of money. They know that WordPress is a big part of the web, and so Matt's answer was really, really strange and vague, and basically led most of us sitting together going, "Okay, Automatic just said that they would be for sale." So,
wow.
Because he said, it's not Google, but if we were to be bought by a company who is evil or not evil, I thought that was an interesting use of terms, blah, 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 right? Which makes sense on why he's been pushing so hard on the Gutenberg, because you've got to satisfy the venture capitalists so that you're in a liquidity situation to be purchased. So
you need to be able to move all the boxes around on the screen, make it easy for people to actually use the software, right?
Yeah. If you weren't me and my little group of friends at Europe sitting here saying about that, and you've now heard me say on the internet 2 weeks later that Automatic is now courting themselves in a very coy way. That's my analysis as a marketer and as somebody who's deeply involved. I'm telling you. So watch for that, because that is going to be the next big acquisition. And then it's going to be, well, what do we think about that? Because right now, we're not really that happy with Automatic, even though Automatic spends a ton of money supporting people who are part of the Make WordPress labor force volunteer organization, right? So what happens?
Man, you're starting to like channel Jim Cramer. He's gonna have like all those buttons that goes like the Mad Money guy. You're starting to sound like this. This is getting good, Bridget. We're gonna have to rename this whole show. It's gonna be like WordPress or something.
I'm just saying. Okay, and so Emmanuel just brought up the other elephant in the room, which we found out while we were all there, is Microsoft, a traditionally closed source platform, buying GitHub, which is closed sourced, but it's the main tool that open source people use. So that was like, wow, GitHub, like they're not part of WordPress per se, but what the heck is Microsoft doing? Microsoft, in my opinion, is trying to stay relevant. They have their own open source Umbraco piece of crap. The worst thing I've ever seen in my whole life. I don't even know. You know what? When you're me and you've mostly been raised on WordPress, except for a little bit of, front page and Dreamweaver. Okay. And you're a blogger and you're used to seeing WordPress. Then all of a sudden you're using Umbraco and you're like, where's my Yoast meta box? Where do my words go? Where's my keyword? What is happening here? How come I don't have the tiny MC editor? Why do I have to go into the code thing just to make a list? Like I'm telling you, and even the one that's being used by I don't even know what it is, by my part-time job, I'm like, what the F is this piece of crap? And you're sitting there going, whoa. So guess what? Now Microsoft buys GitHub. So what's going to happen to GitHub? Are we going to leave GitHub? Is GitHub going to get better, or is GitHub going to make Microsoft better?
Right. Yeah. I saw tons of people that were like, pitchforks there. Everybody was just going nuts about it. Oh, we need to move to something else. And then people were even talking about like moving to things that actually don't do anything. Like they're like, I'm switching to source tree. And we're like, that's cool, but that's just like, it's like saying I'm switching to tower. It's just, it's the software that talks to the thing. It's not the actual thing. But like, you have a whole bunch of companies that want to just go like, and I've even seen some where what's the one? There's a few different ones that are out there that people are using that are more than just a GitHub type replacement, where it actually has project management pieces tied into it. The one that Steve Zengit uses, I can't remember what that one's called.
I forgot.
Mercurial or something like that. There's a couple different ones that are out there, but like those types of things, it's like I saw people going like, all right, I'm moving to this thing, and they're just like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go try something else now. And there's projects that exist on GitHub that don't exist anywhere else. Like they have been built that way. They're staying that way. GitHub's kind of made it as a way of being able to really showcase this stuff off. But
it's too big. It's like the Facebook of code repository.
Right. And it's like it's like you used to say, which is funny that we use Google Hangouts, but like people would just say, I want to Skype you. Like Skype was the way of audio video communicating with someone, and then FaceTime comes out, and then Google Hangouts come out, and then Ello comes out. Like all these different like pieces of software and utilities to be able to talk to each other all start coming out, even though people are still using Skype owned by Microsoft.
I know. So it's mostly Europeans who want to use Skype for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the thing is, our code isn't being maintained here. So GitHub's a little different because it's a library.
Right.
It's a storage working library. It's like building a storage unit with boxes in it that people can go in and out of. You know what I mean? Like, and you're having these huge projects like Gutenberg being managed on GitHub, not to mention whatever else. And Emmanuel Costa in the chat is saying Microsoft was the most active company at GitHub in 2017, so it makes sense they acquired it. And Sentinel is saying they moved to GitLab. And
GitLab, yeah.
Roby is saying, I came in late. Did we talk about Adobe acquiring Magento? So like the thing is, it's so funny because when I was a kid, you had AT&T, and AT&T was the big company, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, you're a monopoly, break it up. So then it was Pac Bell this and Pac Bell South and Pac Bell California and Pac Bell East and da-da-da-da-da. And then you had AT&T as a cellular company, and you had Pac Bell as a cellular company. Then all of a sudden they start merging, and it's like our childhood didn't exist anymore, right? and so there's always this resistance within the whole of our culture against monopolies, but monopolies always have a convenience factor. With cable companies and things that are infrastructure based, we prefer something that's reliable. We prefer Verizon having the most red dots, right? And we prefer GitHub being this big giant infrastructure. And with hosting companies, they also provide that. So for them to make their customers easier, have a better onboarding experience, I'm not sure if that's the Gen Pop or the developers. I feel like hosts have their audience with developers, not with real people, not with the general population. But it's definitely something to think about, and definitely the way it's communicated. I think that if there was a hosting company that said, Bridget, we want to buy blah 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 blah, how do we deal with it? I'd be like, communicate often, communicate clearly. Like, vote early, vote often, right? Because the days of just accepting PR releases and moving on with your life is over. Social media has given us all a voice. If you want to make your customers feel like they matter, you have to communicate. You can't just, plan a family vacation to Bora Bora with 3 generations of your family and then 2 days later say, I filed for divorce. It doesn't work like that. There's something wrong, and people feel betrayed by the appearance that things are okay, and then all of a sudden they're not. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to talk.
Now I'm gonna have to go back. You ruined me. I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna have to go watch Matt's video
just
again.
Just the question and answer part.
Yeah, I'll go back to that. But man, that's crazy,
right?
And what would happen? I mean, that's an entire another topic. What would happen if something like that were to occur? Like, what actually happens then?
I don't know.
Because like for instance, when they were talking earlier about having Magento be purchased by Adobe, Adobe's not one of those companies that takes existing products and goes like, these 2 existing products should be one. No, they don't ever do that. Like, all their products, they buy them, they either use them until until they replace it with something else, or it just sits there on the shelf and dies.
Right.
And that's pretty much what's happening with the piece of the website technology that we're using with Adobe at my church. Is we're actually using a software called Business Catalyst. Business Catalyst, they sent out an email to everybody saying, hey, just to let you know, in the next 2 years, we're closing the shop up. Like, we're done supporting this thing. I mean, they still have buttons for Friendster and stuff on there as their social media stuff. Like, they've never touched this thing. So it's yeah, we got to get rid of this thing fast. And so, Adobe is not one of those companies that really kind of doesn't need maturity to their products. They kind of just let them sit there and just kind of rot, unless it's Photoshop, Illustrator, any of the big suite that they have.
Yeah.
When it comes to something like Magento at least has a huge amount of market share that they and people that are actually using that product. So yeah, we're probably gonna have to come back, switch back around to this whole thing and talk about what would happen if Automatic was purchased, and what would happen to the I didn't even think about that. What would happen with that, and what would happen with the fact that you have a nonprofit that's running one part of it, and the other part of it is an actual business that's running. So how do those 2 things kind of work?
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting. Well, you know what, Bridget, we got 10 minutes left. We want to transition over to doing our tool or tip of the week. What do you got? Do you have anything? Do you want to take a couple minutes while I explain mine?
Well, actually, I'm going to tell a tip that was actually used by me this week from you.
Ooh, all right.
Find my friends. The friend finder thing on iPhone. Okay, so I didn't even think about that as a dating safety plan. It didn't occur to me because I always told my friends where I was going. But now I have this one friend with a really bad boyfriend. I can't trust her to tell where I'm going because I don't want him to know where I'm going. So Jason Tucker says, why don't you find my friends? Just tell me and Jen Miller. Just turn it on while you know. And I'm like, that is the best thing ever, because if we're all being, single in this world, or whatever, and we're traveling by yourself. Either way, if you're married and you're traveling, it's a good thing to have a couple people that you can trust. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave this on. I don't care if Jason Tucker and Jen Miller know where I am at all times. It doesn't matter. I'm in Dana Point. It's really exciting. But I didn't even think about it when I went to Europe. Here I am in Europe, semi by myself. I was with other people, but still, it never occurred to me. I just thought, okay, I'll tell the embassy, because I registered with the STEP program, which was great because I got alerts that they were having protests and whatever. And I told my mom and Jen and Julie where I was. So that's fine. But find my friends makes sense, because what if something really does happen? And Jason, there were some people in the taxi system at Europe who were taken by some scammers, and then when they wouldn't pay what they wanted, they dropped them off in the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
So, you know what? I didn't want to necessarily say it because it kind of is a heavy thing and maybe it
Right.
seems weird, but you know what? It's the more that I've been thinking about this week, that's the most important tool. I think when we're traveling, there should be a couple people and WordPress people, we're all traveling all the time, but there could be all kinds of things happening domestically or whatever. And then for me, it's, dating, because I have my system set up, but once you progress, you're not always going to stay at the same bar or whatever. You're going to do stuff with people. Somebody should know where you are.
And one of the things I mentioned to you, but I don't know if you actually picked it up because we were just texting back and forth and stuff, is don't do the one where if you're using Find Friends or something like that, don't do the one where you're sharing your location the entire time. For a number of reasons. For one, I really don't care where you're at all the time, and I don't need to know that you're, wherever all the time. Because I have a bunch of people that I follow on there because they're just like, yeah, I want you to know where I'm at all the time. But what I will tell you is by doing it where it's only a certain amount of time, like until midnight or until the next day, or whatever that whole thing is. The next hour. I usually do it when I'm driving if I was driving to somebody's house, like if I was going to go to your house right now, Bridget, I'd say, hey, share my location for the next hour. So now you're not like, where's Jason at? Where's Jason at? And I'm not having to like text you or call you or none of that stuff. You just know I'm going to your house. And when I get there, you'll know. And so, but the reason why I was saying that is because that actually sends a notification saying, hey, just let you know, Bridget's sharing her location with you for the next however long. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And now I know that. So almost that's like a trigger just saying like, hey, and she's expecting to be back around this time. And every once in a while you just go pop in there and look, because I always look to see where my kids are and what everybody's doing.
Exactly. And my friends do that with Waze and Uber. So it's just smart.
Oh yeah. Especially with like Uber. I mean, you can share your location, say I'm going to be here at a certain time. Even the Uber drivers app does the exact same thing. I'm going on this ride. I'm picking somebody up. I'll let them know that.
Yeah, it's just smart and we're a little bit dehumanized.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good tip that you actually gave me, but like that's the one that I've been using and telling my friends this week. So.
And it's super. There are ones that are out there that are cross-platform as well. So definitely look into those too. One of them was like, what was that one? There was one that was a cross-platform. That one that I sent you, Bridget. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a couple of those that are out there. Yeah. We'll find it and we'll throw it in the show notes. But what's nice about those is if you find a cross-platform one, you can at least be able to make sure your Android friends are good as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the thing I picked today was actually funny. I heard about it on a podcast and I didn't realize how cool it would actually be until I sat down today and was like, oh, I need to get my AirPlay, my headphones actually start working. And I was like, okay, so I took them out of the box and I'm like, okay, I put them in my ears and then I have to go up to the Bluetooth menu and I got to say, connect my AirPods to the computer, and then it goes da-dong, and it connects to the computer because they're usually connected to my phone. Well, there's a software, it's nothing WordPress related, but there's a software called Tooth Fairy. And
that's cool.
Developers. And Tooth Fairy makes it so that you can switch off and on the Bluetooth connection for the AirPods. So that way you don't actually have to remember to click on this, remember to click on that. So you can just click it to turn it off and it automatically will pair back onto your phone. And if you switch it again, it'll switch it back to, the computer. So check that thing out. It's called Tooth Fairy. I think it's like $1.99 in the App Store and it's totally worth it.
Yeah. That's so cool.
It's super lame. It's just something that why didn't they just put this into into the computer, software and stuff? But no,
but it happens. Like even in my Honda, when I'm using Waze, and if somebody calls me, then all of a sudden Waze doesn't talk to me anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So like Bluetooth issues are real. And
Bluetooth is definitely an issue.
You don't want you guys texting and driving. So stop doing that.
Yeah. So it's called Tooth Fairy. What's neat about it is it lives up on the bar there. It works with any of the wireless Bluetooth wireless stuff that is from Apple as well as Beats. So like the Beats X and the Beats, all those other ones that are Bluetooth. those will all work with us as well. And it'll even tell you what the battery life is on it as well. So it'll tell you what the left and right ones are and all that.
Yeah. And Eric from Peepso is saying that he uses wireless Bose and he has them connected to his Mac and a phone, and they work at the same time. That's kind of cool.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I like that.
Cool. Yeah. But also, yeah, just
what are you thinking about? You got a 5-minute rant in you might as well just knock it out.
Okay. So like, I'm just saying, like, stop texting. There's nothing that important. And then I'll go back to what I was saying before. I have searched for the last 15 minutes for the transcript of Matt Mullenweg's or the video of the whole thing. I can't find it.
Oh,
so it'll be interesting. Maybe somebody like actually tweeted some stuff, but there was a weird wording in there that when we all watched it, we were looking at each other going, is this for real? Jen and I were in the other room because it was too crowded, and we just watched it on TV. It was live streamed on YouTube, so maybe it's there. But I want the transcript. I want to read the words, but I'm sure it's on their YouTube channel because that's how we watched it. But it was just really interesting the way it was kind of vaguely. That wasn't like, what? WordPress isn't for sale. Next question. Like, that was the answer we expected. WordPress isn't something that you can buy or sell. It's a free. But automatic, if somebody might be interested, we might be dating. If a certain tall, dark, and handsome musician wanted to take me out for root beer floats, then you're like, maybe. Right? It was that, like, not vague.
Yeah.
It was. The manufactured vagueness was not vague. It was so bizarre. We're like, that was a really weird answer. So anyway.
Yeah, I was looking as well for a transcript. I don't think we have anybody that's doing, unless somebody actually did a transcription of it.
Well, the court reporter people. Yeah, I'll keep looking for it because it's going to bug me until I find it. But
yeah, I'll have to dig around in there and see if I can find it.
Anyway, like, just be careful, you guys, with we just think that sometimes we don't realize that texting and all that stuff, it matters. Like, be careful.
You're driving or what?
Yeah, when you're driving, like, what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I just feel like sometimes we don't yeah. But I've been with a lot of people lately who are texting when they're driving. It's a little bit terrifying.
Nope. I just yell at Siri, and then she says whatever she says back on the other end of it, and I go, oh, well.
It's terrible, too. She hates me. Siri hates me so much.
I have a new car, and the car has CarPlay in it, and so I just plug my phone in, and then the whole car turns into the iPhone. And I just, hey, tell her, tell my wife, blah, blah, blah. And it goes, okay. And it just goes and says it. Hey, tell my daughter, blah, blah, blah. And it just goes off and says it.
Does she understand you the more that you talk?
I use it a lot.
Oh, okay.
Like, I use it a lot. And so, no, she hasn't really figured me out yet. There's some words that I'll say WPwatercooler, and it's like Debbie's something another. Debbie's W water cooler. It's like it doesn't. Yeah, Debbie's P water cooler is what it usually says.
Debbie's P.
And I'm like, oh, that's great. Yeah, you should definitely tweet that one. That'd be awesome.
My other tip is I've been looking at jobs because that's what I do, and sometimes that's how I get my leads. And I'll like say, hey, would you like to outsource this? You look at the LinkedIn jobs. Most of the time, they can outsource cheaper. So that's a little tip. But somebody wrote WordPress developer didn't capitalize the P. So I wrote them and said, you're going to want to change that or you're not going to get the right person. Proofread your job listings. Love, Bridget.
Exactly.
So
all right, folks, that's it. Top of the hour. I want to say thank you very much for all of you for coming out and hanging out with us on WP Watercooler Network, and I really appreciate that. Go over to our website at WPwatercooler.com. You can click on the links there to subscribe. And also, if you're looking to advertise and get in front of a bunch of people that are watching this, we had dozen-ish, maybe even 24 here watching live. We end up having definitely anywhere between 300 to 600 people downloading this stuff throughout the weeks and stuff. Definitely help us out. Go over there and sponsor with us. All the information, we put everything out there, so feel free to go take a look at that. We're also we just applied to be added into Spotify. So if you're a Spotify person and you want to listen to us on Spotify, we're going to be on Spotify pretty soon here. So feel free to go take a look at that over there as well. So I'll talk to you all later.